Hi friends, whizzing through part 3 of 4 of Poer Tree in Motion, the Power Genealogy. And without further ado, share screen. Here, here. Angela's catches. Poetry in Motion. And here we go. Part 2, part 3, here we go. As researched by Frances Mary Power. Poetry in Motion. I'm actually really enjoying this, even though I had read it years ago. I'm really enjoying it on the revisit. So let's just make it big. There we go. So this is an acknowledgement from Frances Mary. It says, thanks to Pauline Barnhart, her research given to me for the Madron family. Thanks to Dixie Lee Wright for her settled research. Thanks to Janet Cochran for her Paget and Salyers family research. Thanks to Clarice Tucker and Elizabeth E. Bullard Watson for their Powers family research. Name Robert de la Poer. Given name Robert, surname de la Poer. Sir, 1st Baron of Dunoil and Lord of Waterford. Sex male. Death, yes. Information from the Irish Builder, 1891. Sir Robert de Poer was the son of Sir Bartholomew de Poer, Lord of Blackburgh, Devon, 14, temporary, Henry II, and his wife, Eleanor. He accompanied Henry II, 15 himself, in 1172, was Knight Marshal to that monarch, 15, wow, and was granted by him in AD 1177, quote, in custodiam, the city of Waterford. With all, the land is God's, we're only stewards of it. These people that grant land, it's just shocking. With all the circumjacent province, and appointed that the following land should, for the time to come, belong to the service of Waterford, well, that's something, viz. All the lands which lie between Waterford and the water beyond Lismore, which comprehend the greatest part of the county of Waterford, and also the lands of Ossory, end quote. He obtained a grant of that portion of the present county of Waterford extending from the river Suir to the sea, excepting the city and centred cantred of the Danes, a district thence called the Poer, or Power Country, thus depossessing the O'Flanagans, the ancient Celtic proprietors. From Sir Robert de Poer have descended the Barons of Dunoil, the Barons of Iverk, the Barons of Kells in Ossory, wow, the Lords Power and Curraghmore, and Earls of Tyrone, and the Eustaces, Barons of Port Leicester, and Viscounts of Baltinglass. When William Fitz-Adelm de Burgh was recalled to England, the king appointed Hugh de Lacy Governor-General of Ireland, AD 1179, and joined with him in commission Sir Robert de Poer, Governor of Waterford and Wexford. Sir Robert, by his wife Catherine, had issued 4 sons. Sir John de Poer, Baron of Dunoil, eldest son. Sir Eustace de Poer, a benefactor to the Dominican monastery of St. Saviour's, Dublin, AD 1224. Walter de Poer, Lord of Dumbarton, and Bartholomew de Poer, living 10th Henry III, who continued the line of Blackburgh or Blackburgh in Devon. It says change date 27th of November. Oh, okay, so it was updated. Father, Bartholomew de la Poer. Mother, Eleanor. I have a Baron de Poer research or viewing these notes on my blog, and I can really see why. So Bartholomew de la Poer, mother Eleanor, marriage 1, Catherine married. Okay, children, John Power, Eustace Power, Bartholomew Power, Roger Power, Eleanor Power. Name Roger de la Poer, given name Roger, surname de la Poer. Male, death 1188 in Castle of Dangistrone, Ossory. Information from the Irish Builder, 1891. Sir Roger served with Sir John de Courcy, Earl of Ulster, when he invaded that province, where he was second to none in the glorious list of warriors. Of him, Cambrensis says, quote, "It might be said without offence, there was not a man who did more valiant acts than Roger de Poer, who, although he were young and beardless, apparently 15, yet he showed himself a lusty, valiant, and courageous gentleman, and who grew into such good credit that he had the government of the country about Leighlin, as also in Ossory." I didn't realise Kells is in Ossory. Kells is only 20 minutes down the road from me here. He's also described by the same author as a beardless youth, fair and tall, and again as the youngest, bravest, and handsomest of all the Anglo-Norman knights. He was traitorously killed at the castle of Dangistrone in Ossory, AD 1188, by his wife and niece of Sir Armoricus de Saint Laurence, and probably daughter of Robert de Tristram, and of Cecilia, his wife. He had issue a son John. Father Bartholomew de la Poer, mother Eleanor, married Cecilia de Tristram, 26th of February. Okay, that's just when it's been updated. Children, John Power, William de la Poer, William, male, death, yes. That's why. I presume Y means yes. Okay, of William little mention is made. Cambrensis, speaking of the distinguished men who flourished at that time, refers to him and states that he was, quote, at Waterford. Father Bartholomew de la Poer, this is going through the children, mother Eleanor, named Simon de la Poer. Simon de Poer confirmed in AD 1187 a grant made by Milo de Cogan, his father-in-law, to the Abbey of the Blessed Virgin Mary in Dublin, and he made a further. That's interesting. See, there's a mix of Catholics and Protestants in this ancestry. It's quite curious. And he made a further grant to the same abbey of 60 carucates of land contiguous to Cork in his territory of Munster. He was probably the Poer who built the castle of Power's Court in the county of Wicklow. He left a son, William. In the Annals of Loch C, edited by the late William M. Hennessy, MRIA, Volume 1, page 185, the name of Simon Power is mentioned under the year 1190. Thus, Simon Poer, and Mr. Hennessy has annexed the following footnote. Simon Poer, this entry has been left unfinished. The name of Simon Poer, Poer or de la Poer, does not occur in the usual lists of the early English colonists of Ireland. It is very probable the unfinished entry refers to the year of his death. Father Bartholomew, same father and mother, Bartholomew and Eleanor. Margaret de Cogan, named Philip de la Poer. Okay. Drogo, that's a strange name, it says pedigree. And then we have about 930, Poer, France. Drogo de Poer. Philip de la Poer, Eleanor. Descendant register. Bartholomew de la Poer, Drogo de Poer, Alain, strong beard. Matuido de Poer, Arnaud, Comore, he married Eleanor. So these are just all references, really. Children of Bartholomew de la Poer and Eleanor are Robert, Roger, Simon, and Philip. Okay, Robert de la Poer, brackets Bartholomew de la Poer, Drogo de Poer, Drogo Alain, Strongbeard, Matudo de Poer, Arnaud. He married Catherine. So Robert seems to be a branch in France. Children of Robert de la Poer and Catherine are John Power, Eustace Power, Bartholomew Power, Roger Power, and Eleanor Power. Or maybe this is going back a bit. Roger de la Poer, Bartholomew de la Poer, Drogo de Poer, Drogo Alain, Strongbeard. We said that. Child of Roger de la Poer and Cecilia de Tristram is John Power, Simon de la Poer. He married Margaret de Cogan. William Power, John Power. Again, you can refer to the notes either on my blog, angelascaches.org, or on my Facebook notes, Angela Power Disney. John Power, Robert de la Poer. Yeah, children of John Power are Robert Power, died in 1249. Excuse me, and Piers Power, died 1283 at sea. I like the name Piers Power, that's rather lovely. Roger Power, Robert de la Poer, and so on and so forth. He married de Tristram, daughter of de Tristram and Cecilia. Children of Roger Power and de Tristram are John Power and Walter Power, very common names they seem to use. Piers Power, brackets John Powers, Robert de la Poer, Bartholomew Drogo, Alain Strongbeard, Matuedo de Poer, Arnaud, died 1283 at sea. Child of Piers Power is John Power, born in 1281 in Carnarvon, died 1328. Carnarvon, there's a castle there, I think I've been there. Okay, John Power, Roger Power, right, okay. Child of John Power is Matthew Power. Walter Power, he married Faya Dincourt, daughter of William Dincourt. Children of Walter and Faya are Benet Power and Eleanor Power. Descendant register generation number 5. John Power, John Powers, Robert de la Poer, and so on and so forth. Was born in Carnarvon, 1281, died 1328. Children of John Power are Piers Power, died 1328. Benet Power died 1328 as well. That's strange. 2 brothers died the same year. And Eustace Power. Matthew Power, he married Matilda. He married Dionysia. Children of Matthew Power and Dionysia are Walter Power, Eustace Power died 1311, and Milo Power. Benet Power, Roger, yeah, he married Margaret Legrasse, daughter of William Legrasse. Child of Benet, they seem to have only one child, a lot of them. Child of Benet Power and Margaret Legrasse is Eustace Power. Descendant registered generation number 6. Piers Power, he married Joan de Wogan, like Terry Wogan, daughter of John de Wogan. Children of Piers Power and Joan de Wogan are John Power died 1368 and Benet Power. Benet Power, he married Catherine Fitzmaurice, which was the name of my grammar school in Bradford-on-Avon. Child of Benet Power and Catherine Fitzmaurice is John Power, again, another John Power. Eustace Power, child of Eustace Power is John Power. Walter Power, child of Walter Power is Matthew Power. Eustace Power, children of Eustace Power are Arnold Power, died 1328 in the prison tower in the castle of Dublin, Ireland. I wonder why. Eustace Power, or Fitz-Eustace. Bartholomew de la Poer, he was the son of 2 Drogo de Poer, he married Eleanor. Drogo de Poer, he was the son of 4 Drogo and 5 Gode. Child is Bartholomew, he married Eleanor. Drogo was born about 930 in Poer, France. He was the son of Alain, Strongbeard, and Rossille d'Anjou de Grisgonel. Child of Gode and Drogo is Drogo de Poer. Generation number 4, Alain. He was the son of Mathieu de Poer, Avoir Brittany. Rossille d'Anjou de Grisgonel was born about 918 in Anjou, France. Children of Rossille d'Anjou de Grisgonel and Alain Strongbeard II are Surec de Nantes. Drogo was born about 930 in Poer, France. He married Gaude. Well de Nantes, Eustace de Nantes. He married Dardenne, Ide Dardenne, Dardon. And this looks German, the next part, generation number 5. Matuedo de Poer was born 897, died 930. He was the son of Arnaud and Gemege. Avoir Brittany, she was the daughter of Alain the Great and Oregon. Child of Avoir Brittany and Matuedo de Poer is Alain Strongbeard II, who was born about 910 in France, died 952 in France. He married Rossille d'Anjou de Grisgonel. She was born about 918 in Anjou, France. Arnaud was born 867 in Poer, France. I'd like to know where that is. He was the son of Conmore. Gemege, she was the daughter of Guillaume and Idouane. Child of Gemege and Arnaud is Matuedo de Poer, born 897, died 930. He married Avoir Brittany, the daughter of Alain the Great and Oregon. Alain the Great was born about 850 and died 907. He was the son of Reader. This is like amazing research. How did they even keep records back then? Children of Oregon and Alain the Great are Paquitan, Ren. Avoir Brittany, she married Matuedo de Poer about 910, the son of Arnaud and Gemege. He was born 897, died 930. Michael Power's research, speculations as to his origin. Michael Powers was born in 1727 in Ireland and emigrated to the United States sometime before the year 1755, at which time he married Hannah Fox in New London, Connecticut. And then the author says, at this point, I can find no mention of him in any colonial records prior to the year 1755. The first mention of him is in the diary of Joshua Hampstead, where he writes, quote, January 22nd, 1755, Wednesday the 22nd, fair, mostly some scattering rain. I rid out to cornfield to fodder the cattle and mended up some fence and in Crossman lot. In the evening, I rid out to the widow Susanna Fox's and married Michael Powers, an old countryman, and Hannah Fox, daughter of Benja Fox, deceased. There has been some debate as to the interpretation of an old countryman by fellow researchers. I believe this to mean that Michael came from the old country, i.e. Ireland. New London Vital Statistics says the following. Michael Powers from the old country and Hannah Fox, daughter of Benjamin, my cousin, January the 22nd, 1755. This record seems to confirm my suspicions regarding Michael's origins. You might ask yourself at this point, to which country are these records referring, and why would I assume it to be Ireland? There are several reasons for my assumption. 1. Joshua Hampstead defines his use of the term an old countryman on page 601 and 602 of his famous diary during the year 1753. The passage recites as follows. Tuesday, fair and warm, I was at home, foreign, and at noon set out for Abraham Morgan's and married his sister Anna Morgan unto James Toole, an old countryman, alias Irish, a new corner into town about 3 months. 2. The Powers surname was extremely common in Ireland during this time period. In fact, it was and still is the most frequently occurring name in County Waterford about Ireland. It's also in the top 60 occurring names in the country of Ireland. 3. Nearly all of the Power families I've researched in the Connecticut and Rhode Island areas during this particular time frame originated in Ireland. And 4. There's no genetic evidence to prove that my family line is in any way related to the British originated Powers families, which for the most part descended from Walter Power and Trial Shepherd in the colonies. In fact, all evidence definitively points to the contrary. My DNA has proven to be not related to the Walter Power line's DNA markers contributed by several of their descendants. 5. Genetic evidence indicates that my family line is most closely related to other Power family lines that seem to originate in Ireland. 6. Analysis of family tree DNA data indicates that my 25 marker DNA test most commonly matches with the DNA of Ireland originating descendants based upon their recent ethnic origins comparisons. Based upon the above data, I have no choice but to assume Ireland as the birthplace for Michael Powers. We know from his gravestone record that he was born in 1727. Exactly where remains a mystery at this time. With the assumption, these DNA tests, actually, I'm just going to say an aside here, they are mostly run by the Scientologists or the Mormons. And there is a strong case to be made that the Illuminati or the 1% or the powers that be have a very keen interest in documenting everybody's DNA, whether it be to locate lost bloodlines or manipulate things or who knows why. But they do have a very, I wouldn't myself, my daughter's done it, but I wouldn't myself submit to DNA testing, although it's probably been tested already without my knowledge. Okay, so with the assumption being made that Michael Powers was born in Ireland, what motivators existed at the time that might prompt his immigration to America, ? To understand this, we must look at the happenings occurring in Ireland prior to 1755. Between 1717 and the American Revolutionary War, an estimated 250,000 Irish settlers left Ireland for the new lands across the Atlantic. Wow. They travelled in extremely hazardous conditions in simple wooden sailing ships for Boston, Philadelphia, Newcastle, Delaware, Charleston, Baltimore, and New York. Huddled together with the most meagre of belongings and money, they were forced to move because of religious restrictions, economic deprivations, and several bouts of famine brought about by weather and disease. Now again, the big famine was alleged to be brought about deliberately by the British, but we'll see about that may not be covered in here. There were 5 great waves of emigration to America from Ireland in the 18th century. Wow. 1717 to 18, 1725 to 29, 1740 to 41, 1754 to 55, and 1771 to 75. In order to understand Michael Power's possible motivations for immigration, or emigration as we call it from Ireland, we must look at the 3 periods of emigration that occurred during his lifetime previous to the first mentionings of him in America. The first wave in 1725 to 29, I will neglect to cover in detail simply because Joshua Hampstead would not refer to Michael as an old countryman if he'd come to America when he was 1 year old and had lived there until he was 28 when he married Hannah Fox. He simply wouldn't be from the old country at this point. The, quote, forgotten Irish famine of 1740 to 41 led to the second great wave of emigration to America during the life of Michael Powers. An estimated 400,000 people perished in that famine. God. Michael would have been approximately 13 or 14 years old during this wave of migration. He would have lived in the colonies for 15 years before he married Hannah Fox. This would definitely have been a possible time of his immigration, but I doubt once again that Joshua Hempstead would have called him an old countryman if he'd been living in the colonies for 15 years. There are plenty of people in Hempstead's diary who'd been born or lived in the area for over 15 years, and they're never described as being an old countryman. Because I can find no records of Michael Power's existence in America prior to 1755, I have to assume that the third period of immigration is a far more likely time frame for Michael's trip to America. The 1754 and 55 exodus resulted from a mass propaganda effort by politicians in America promising land and a better way of life and relief from other calamitous drought in Ireland. As drought ravaged the countryside and bad harvests were the result, testimony of Irish success in America struck a particularly responsive chord in hearts back in Ireland. Yeah, this is such a tradition. Like my nanan, mother of 16, had a son and a brother and sisters and lots of relations emigrate to America. And it was just like a legend. You never saw them again unless you know, in the last century would be brave enough to fly out there, but they never seemed to come home. But the letters and the parcels were like just legendary. So Francis Mary says, I believe that it was in 1754 that Michael made his trek to America. He was most likely driven by the onslaught of the prevailing famine and probably arrived at Boston, Charleston, New York, or New London. An old family tale indicates that he and a brother may have stowed away aboard a ship headed for America from Ireland. Some of our Power clan from Dungarvan County, Waterford, right, which is where my father's from. So this was very short, so I might just go on to number 4, because people are probably used to this being an hour and a half by now. So let's go straight on to number 4, because I think that was very short so far. Part 4, here we go. This should be the last part, I think. This might repeat a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, a little bit of repetition, not too much. So the first mention of Michael Powers occurs in the writings of Joshua Hempstead on 22nd of January 1755 and is a record of his marriage to Hannah Fox. I can find very little to indicate that he was a man of means, and the first land transactions I find for him don't occur until the year 1769. This is 14 years after his arrival to the colonies. It may be a possibility that he entered the country under the bonds of indentured servitude, like a slave, due to the fact that the journey from Ireland to America was not a cheap one. So either he stowed away or he agreed to be a servant for however many years to buy his passage. I find it particularly interesting that several of the Power family lines that are living in the Connecticut and Rhode Island areas at the time of Michael's immigration seem to possess great wealth. Several are slave owners and ship captains. Wow. There are a considerable number of land transactions that occur within these families. Curiously, there are not any land transactions between these families of the same name and the line of Michael Powers. Another strange occurrence is the fact that Michael Powers is buried in New London, Connecticut, very near the graves of Joseph Powers and his wife, and in close proximity to several of the children of Joseph. Some people in the past have concluded that Joseph must be his father. I disagree, as Joseph's father, Joshua, entered the colonies in 1674, and in 1679 fathered Joseph. Joseph, therefore, was living in New London, Connecticut, and owned land in Kingston, Rhode Island, during the time of Michael's birth. If Joseph was Michael's father, Michael could not be from the old country, as New London vital records indicate. In addition to this, there's no mention of Michael in any of the documents that describe the members of Joseph's family. And Michael does not appear to be granted land by Joseph like Joseph's other children. I instead believe that the relationship between Michael and Joseph could be one of a different sort. At this time, however, I don't know what that relationship might have been. Perhaps one day our DNA research will crack this puzzle. If I were to speculate as to the name of the father of Michael at this point, I would be drawn to the name Nicholas, which is also the name of Michael's first son. Although they're not followed by all Irish naming conventions for the time indicate the following. 1. The first son is named after the father's father. 2. The second son is named after the mother's father. 3. The third son is named after the father. Or 1. The first son is named after the father's father. Second son named after the father's grandfather. Third son named after the father. If these rules hold true, we can make an assumption that the name of Michael's father's father could perhaps be Joseph as well. Only time will tell if these assumptions prove to be correct. If I were to speculate as to the name of the mother of Michael, I would suggest Mary. Once again, Irish naming conventions suggest the following. The first daughter named after the mother's mother or the father's mother. The second daughter named after the father's mother or mother's mother. The third daughter named after the mother, or first daughter named after the mother's mother or father's mother, second daughter named after the mother's eldest sister, and third daughter named after the mother. Gosh, that would be confusing. Since Michael's second daughter was named Naomi, and Hannah's eldest sister was named Naomi, after her father's first wife who passed away, I have to conclude that Michael's first daughter, Mary, was named after his own mother. In both of the above instances, the third child of a given sex was named after the appropriate parent. This seems to follow the naming conventions in the second group of each of the above sets of rules. To further substantiate this theory, we can look at the naming convention used by Hannah Fox's father, Benjamin, and his first wife, Naomi Rogers. He, in fact, uses this same naming convention for the males in his family. The female naming convention differs, but the first daughter is still named after his mother. The diagram of the relationships can be found here. As the above information indicates, I'm looking for the following. 1. Passenger manifest records from approximately 1754 for Michael Powers from Ireland to the colonies. Well, if he was a stowaway or an indentured servant buying his passage that way, I don't know, would they record it? 2. The parents of Michael Powers in Ireland, they're possibly named Nicholas and Mary. 3. The area of Ireland from which Michael originates. I currently suspect Waterford because the Powers surname was very common there and many men by the name of Nicholas Powers were living there during this particular time frame. And my father was Nicholas, well, he is Nicholas Power. And then the author says, if you run across any information that can aid in my quest, or if you suspect I'm way off base regarding my suppositions, please contact me at Kenneth Roy Powers. Oh, maybe it's not Francis Mary writing this. Maybe this is another piece of research. I would love to discuss other theories or additional information regarding this particular ancestor. De Poer. Now, this is an unusual way to spell it, P-A-O-R-S, or P-A-O-R. Their symbol is a fish, and one account of the name origins is that it was Breton for fish. I studied history of Ireland, and I was appalled by the injustices and all the politics from Tudor times and long before, when our great-greats, etc., were leading the invasion of Ireland under the king and had to watch Strongbow, who was hot-headed. The English kings came in on the back of the Irish invasion, and the Poer were captains of it. sorry, it's 12th century, the grandchildren of Sire de la Poer, Lucia de la Poer, the grandchildren of Lucia de la Poer. In both the English and the Irish invasion, there were deals with the popes. A lot of money came from the Vatican. We have a Knight of the Order of Jerusalem in existence. He is Dr. Poer. Wow. At, I believe, Dublin University. Wow. And he's the only one alive of the Power clan who had the cottage Jerusalem from the Crusades. It can only be passed down his line. Poer, I think he's a great horseman. Dr. Poer, yeah. I think he's a horseman. Right. Francis Mary, September, right. So Francis Mary says, Dad is a Poer. We came to England in the 19th century in the Great Famine, or not so great. They had nothing. We thought they were peasants, as my family thought they were also, until we started researching. Some of my research was stolen. Wow. By the famous Family Tree Company. And a very old book I found online was copyrighted, though it belonged to our family. Wow. No wonder you, I'm so grateful, Francis Mary. 2 years ago, she writes, and maybe still ongoing, the Poers were part of the Viking DNA project, and Viking blood was found in Poer males. An exact match was also found in a German man called Martin, who had reached a block in his family tree research. It opened up the fact that the Vikings had used Germany as a corridor to the Middle East, and that the Poer Vikings had been through, and so must Rollo. The Troy connection seems very likely, though it was Heraldus Fitzgerald who had written about the Viking-Troy connection with the Cambrian Welsh Normans. The Walshes also went with them into Ireland. This was Welsh. The name Poer became anglicised, and it sounded like power to the Irish, so they became the Powers. Wow. It took 100 years or so for them to be accepted and, like Vikings, merge into the population. And so they took on the Irish ways and were criticised for it. But they were called the Old English. They were given lands and titles. There are more than several of their castles remaining there, and they dispossessed the Irish of these. Dispossessed. They intermarried. Approaching the Reformation, many remained true to the Catholic beliefs, and many were then dispossessed of land and titles. So there's another time period where they intermarried Catholic, Protestant, aristocrat, peasant, in their own perceptions. They had settled in the south of England for nearly 100 years before the Irish invasion after 1066. The name actually comes from a vow of poverty, and there have been many churchmen in the family, bishops, archbishops, and priests. The Poer males in my family tend to be gaunt, this is Francis Mary talking, those who have been through the famines. The current English side that I've seen, those who've never lived in Ireland, are large, stocky, and look like the knights. I had a blog, Poetry in Motion. I'll try and find the Earl. I was publishing as I discovered things and was top of the ancestral searches briefly. I think she got 4 times in a row in the end. Now, listen to this. Disney comes from the Norman French de, something like the de, Dissigny. Not quite right. I know the spelling is D'', capital I, S-I-G-N-Y. And I put that as my name briefly on Facebook. But because my passport of my married name is in Disney, Facebook wouldn't let me use the original French spelling. Not quite right. It says, she spelled it Dissigny, not quite right spelling. The Norman names were cryptic. And Poer meant vowed poverty. Butler, who were in the tree and who they ran with, but were overtaken by them, probably because of revoking Catholicism. Le Botellier, Fitzgerald, Leinster, therein lies a tale. Gerardini, Heraldus, who wrote about the Poers. In the early trias are the blood conqueror connections, the Dukes, the Geralds, Fitz, founded Monte Carlo, wow, Tuscany, round Norman towers, seem to have had to flee, and these boys carried a Sibylline curse, wow, starvation, which was volatile with Viking witchcraft over Ireland of starvation. Also on that invasion and founding of Dublin, Waterford in the Dark Ages. Father God, I just ask you to break the curses of starvation and poverty over the Power name and over the Irish people, in Jesus' name. It says, Kitale was a direct descendant of the Viking chief Kettle Flatnose. The name is Kettler in Scotland. Your life is very interesting. This is obviously a thread that has been reproduced. Your life is very interesting, and there's much we can agree upon for renouncing curses, yes, and releasing the blessings, amen. There are parallels, but not so extreme. In my search, I found a suspect for Jack the Ripper, a vicar who liked whipping naked women. Oh, God. And the family legend that inspired the Hound of the Baskervilles. Exham Priory, where the thoroughly English Poers or Poers come from, and the lord of the manor who was feared by the locals. The Le Poers had more writers than probably any other family. Wow. And so I cannot use my maiden name to write. My namesake married into Huguenot refugee family who were silk people. Yeah, my mother was French Huguenot, I've said that before. They got nearly all the remaining wealth and dropped Power Le Poer when it wasn't fashionable. But then there were resurgences and variations. Power Le Poer, etc. There was quite a bit of madness and scandal. The Douglas clan asked why they had found Viking blood in their DNA. I replied that there were so many marriages with both Le Poer men and women, that's where it came from. Correct word. It had been hastily researched from an Australian family member who visited Waterford and had found that we were related to Brian Boru, and there was a connection with Spain. This smudged the issue, and therefore we assumed that we'd gone to Ireland from Spain in ancient history and had lived there for thousands of years. We assumed that our star had fallen somehow, and we were then peasants for many hundreds of years. Nothing could have been further from the truth. Like all former Vikings, we assimilated into the culture and converted when necessary. The Le Poers became the Powers to Anglicise, though in Ireland, and adopted the tribal culture. A chief and a bard, and somehow the bardic, poetic element is a noticeable thread with many writers and arts-related people. They went to war, were involved in petty skirmishes, as was the Irish tribal way, and their battle cry was power aboo, power to victory, power aboo, power to victory. They have been described, though, as shrewd political animals, and merging with the culture ensured their settlement, though there would have been many jealousies and rivalries over their lands and titles, as the Irish were dispossessed. They did such a good job of integrating that even their antecedents are convinced they are Irish through and through. Yeah, absolutely. In the 100 years from 1066, they'd settled in Devon and surroundings, were well in with the royal family, the Plantagenets, and chosen for choice offices and special assignments, and were well rewarded for their loyalties to the conqueror and then other leaders. I couldn't find anything in the Doomsday Book, but had just glanced through under the known family names Le Poer. Poer was post-12th century. There appears to have been a move of our family to Wales. I believe the women were left behind, and that they may have simply been stationed there for the word to invade Ireland. How long, I don't know. There are places such as Powys in Wales. I posted on Wikipedia over a stub the story of the Cambrian Norman invasion and the named captains, a Le Poer amongst them, and also as a spy for the king on the behaviour of Strongbow, who true to form married the Viking chieftain's daughter around Waterford. And then our family later established ties with these Viking families who were pure Scandinavian. The Doyles are of those Vikings. If you go back far enough, all the Powers are related from two brothers and their boy children who came over as captains of the Irish invasion in the 1100s over 7 centuries ago. Wow. There were said to be 10,000 Powers in Waterford alone at one time. You can see threads of their success and tenacity in individuals and in the mountains of influence, church, arts and media, law and government, and individuals are well-travelled or live a period abroad. And that seems to be still ongoing. Family sketches. There are several teachers in the family, one professor, one former head. Several live or have lived abroad and in more than one country. And there are several family members who are in banking, but nothing noteworthy there. My own family, this is Frances Mary speaking again. My own family and father's brothers have been heavily involved in communications of one form or another, some basic jobs, and each family has at least one person who's in business and someone who likes the sauce. Yeah, there's an alcohol thing, yeah. They say that the Celts and Native American Indians, or native, like Aborigines, natives, and the Celts have a DNA propensity to addiction, which is why they were so easily conquered in America and also, New Zealand, Australia, by being bribed with alcohol. It's the ruination of many of them. So there she says, my younger brother's the only one who looks like the males of the Devon branch, especially if he had a quixotical beard, as some still do. Joe in California looks like the older Power boys from the south of England, originating in Devon, from the old family, from the same Sire de la Poer, Sire de la Poer, in 1066, i.e. 1066. The Power women stick together and keep at arm's length the women who marry in, and are very jealous of goods and success. Wow. The non-Christian ones tend to bitterness, though, and there have been huge rifts going back decades over a childhood prank. Wow. In old age, the heathen Power women tend to draw the drawbridge up and repel all borders. They are very secretive and are ashamed of divorce. The Blackpool clan have all kept close. We have two models. The oldest brother was involved in arts, media, politics, which I don't share, having had highfalutin contacts in the media. Our family are mentioned widely and inaccurately in Stu McConey's autobiography. Okay. Poer background, Poer family. Poer Hayes derived its name from the Poer family, with whom the Duke family intermarried several times during the 15th and 16th centuries. It was a family long established in Devon, and even more so in the adjacent counties of Gloucestershire, Wiltshire, and Dorset. Of the various Poer family arms, only those of Wiltshire and Dorset, and of a Cornwall branch derived from Devon, resemble those of the Devon family. The circumstantial evidence for a tie between the Devon line and the Wiltshire and Dorset Poer families is very strong. The Poer family made a place for themselves among the Anglo-Norman aristocracy and gentry of England quite early. Roger le Poer, or le Poer, Roger le Poer, or le Poer, was Chancellor of England under King Stephen and died in 1139. He appears to be the first of the le Poers to have achieved national importance in England. Roger, Robert, William and Simon le Poer took part in the conquest of Ireland, accompanying Strongbow, and it's believed that they were all brothers. Roger, who died in 1186, was the most conspicuous of these. Some of the le Poer family subsequently remained in Ireland, ultimately receiving the title Earl of Tyrone. Burke's General Armoury notes that in 1535, Roger le Poer's descendant Richard le Poer, or Poer, of Curraghmore, County Waterford, was made Lord le Poer. However, some descendants of the le Poer brothers returned to England. For example, in the reign of Henry II, William le Poer held lands in Oxfordshire, Herefordshire and Gloucestershire, and Robert le Poer held property in Oxfordshire. Herbert le Poer was the last bishop at Sarum in Wiltshire, and Richard le Poer was the first bishop at the new cathedral at Salisbury, serving from 1217 to 1229. He later served as Bishop of Durham and died in 1237. Richard and Herbert were sons of Richard of Ilchester, Bishop of Winchester and Chancellor of England. These bishops having children. Yeah, they were necessarily illegitimate. Yeah, we saw that. Okay. The Dictionary of National Biography observes of Herbert le Poer, Bishop of Sarum in the early 13th century, that Dr. Stubbs suggests that he was connected with Roger Poer, see Roger, and therefore also with Roger of Salisbury and Richard Fitz-Neal. Canon Rich Jones conjectured that Poer was in this case the equivalent not of pauper, but of puer, or the Norman puer, a knight or cadet of good family. Yeah, because puer in Latin it means young boy, doesn't it? Yeah. Puerile means childish. Puerile. Oh, don't be so puerile, childish, boy-like. He has also pointed out that near Tarrant in Dorset, where Herbert's brother Richard was born, there are places called Porstock and Porton. The names of Porstock and Porton in Dorset are more commonly given as Powerstock and Powerton, both modernised forms of Poer. Canon Jones' interpretation seems very likely to be correct. Poer is the equivalent in this case of Poer. Yeah. Richard le Poer's history was quite distinguished overall, but the best known accomplishment of his career was certainly the movement of the see from Sarum to Salisbury and the erection of Salisbury Cathedral. He organised the effort. I wrongly said he was the architect. I got that wrong. He organised the effort and found the funds for the construction of this jewel among the Gothic cathedrals of England. Yeah, we've seen that. Always regarded as one of the most historically and architecturally important buildings in England, nearly pure example of early English Gothic. He also left less tangible monuments. Richard le Poer is credited with the final form of the use of Sarum, the liturgy, which became the church missal, the Anglican communion. The Sarum rite spread throughout much of southern England and is regarded as among the most elaborate forms of Christian religious service. The elaborate splendour of Sarum ceremonial, as carried out in the cathedral church in the centuries immediately preceding the Reformation, contrasted vividly with the comparative simplicity of the practice of the Roman Church. Yeah, we quoted that. And then we've got Richard found a Cistercian house for nuns and their servants. Nuns and their servants. At his birthplace, Crawford Tarrant in Dorset. And then, he was also credited, probably erroneously, with the Anglican Reel, treatise on the monastic life. Yeah, we've read that. Richard resided for some time, including minimally the year 1223 at Sherborne Castle in Dorset as sheriff. Clearly, the medieval conception of appropriate episcopal roles differed from later standards. It may be more than coincidence that Walter le Poer was sheriff, probably overlapping Richard's tenure as sheriff of adjacent Dorset. The sheriffs were royal appointments at this time, frequently given to related members of families trusted by the crown. Walter le Poer was also a collector of the lay subsidy. Yeah, all said that. Described as possibly an outsider not native to Devon. Yeah, the appointment of the Poers in and after 1222 marks the first appearance of the family in Devonshire. There are references to the Poer family in the pleas of the Devon heir, dealing with civil litigation of 1238. Hugh le Poer was listed as one who pledged for the fine of Walter Lawsonnet and Ralph de Happs in the case of the abduction of Robert de Sickerville de Strackville in Witheridge Hundred. Yeah, jury thing, Barony of Dartington. Yeah, we've read that. The Blakeborough property was in the honour of Plimpton. Yeah. Yeah. Ashbury, Devon. Yeah, I think we've read that. We've read that. Nutwell is south of Exeter on the Exe River. Yeah, we talked about the Prideaux. Herden Prideaux, great-grandson of Paginus de Prideaux and son of Nicholas de Prideaux, married the daughter and heiress of Ralph of Devon. This established the Devonshire line of the family, which after the termination of the Cornwall line in 1387 was the senior line. And we've seen this about the Prideaux side of the family, the Courtenays, John Prideaux, Knight. Yeah, we've seen that. His sister's son, Robert Scobhull, was another of the Earl's esquires. His cousin, also John Prideaux, married the daughter of Robert French, one of Earl Edward's lawyers, in the 1390s. Sir John himself acted as a fiefie of the Earl in 1383 and witnessed with him a charter of Thomas Beauchamp, or Beauchamp as they call it. The Nutwell branch, from which Richard Duke's wife came, was established by a cadet branch of this line. The Danes, strengthened with Swedes, also battled on in France. They fought their way up the rivers of Weser, Rennes, Mars, and Seine into France or Valence. Yeah, we've read that. In the history books from the French monasteries, one can read about their triumphs. You see, how did they get Auntie Mary the nun to join an order of nuns with the mother house in Normandy? It seems it was even my father's generation were moved around like pawns on a chessboard. They tell about the great forces which besieged Paris at Easter 845, commanded by no one less than Ragnar Lodenbrock, which, according to the tales, governed over Sweden, Denmark, Finland, parts of England, and some assorted countries in the east. He came with 120 ships and 5,000 warriors. Yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah, I'll read this again. We've read part of this. When they closed in on Paris, the French King Karl the Bald fled to the monastery of Saint Denis, where he prayed to the saints Dionysius, Saint Germain, and Saint Germanus. Anyhow, nothing helped, because you're not supposed to pray to saints. And on the 28th of March, the great army of the Vikings stood outside the walls of Paris. To convince the people of Paris that they should give their gold to the Vikings, they killed some of their prisoners before the eyes of the Paris people. The king could not do anything else other than give the Vikings what they wanted, and after some trading, they left with over £7,000 worth of silver, which in those days was an enormous sum of money. This kind of money showed what the city had to offer if they would come back, and so they did. They came every summer afterwards. And then it says, after some years, Ragnar's son Bjorn Jernstede took over the enterprise from his father and kidnapped Karl the Great's grandson Ludwig and Goslin. And the ransom, which the now more or less broke Karl the Bald had to pay, brought his country to the verge of economic ruin. In the year 885, a large number of Vikings besieged Paris, but they didn't give in, and after some time the Vikings gave up and fled towards Bulgaria. Yeah, Ragnar Lodbrok had several sons, which all got very famous for their capacities as warriors and merchants. They had interesting names like Ivar Benless, Sigurd Ormega, and in some history books, Hastein, yeah, which became Hastings. Okay. They fought in Aquitaine, went up the River Garonne into the wine district of Bordeaux, Saint-Emilion, yeah, we've read that. Then they had a cruising through Gibraltar, Algeciras, Murcia, Mallorca, Morocco, southern France, Roussillon, Narbonne, Arles, and Nîmes. They went up the River Rhone and stayed over the winter on an island there. Thereafter, they started a spring campaign with a little trip to Italy, Lombardia, where they plundered Pisa and the area of Ligurian. Luna, because they thought it was Rome, and they were deceitful. They would do tricks to win. Yeah. Sicily, Blayland, slaves being grabbed and sold. Historically, it's been confirmed that Vikings have been in Spain. The largest recorded attack came the 31st of July, 844, when a larger attack force hit the shores of Asturian. After this, it continued. Probably it was Hastings and his brother via Galician to Lisbon, which was plundered. Lisbon. Then the turn came to Sevilla, Cadiz. Yeah, we talked about, yeah, we've seen that. An ambassador was sent, a poet and historian, Al-Ghazai. Yeah. And then he got in trouble trying to have an affair with the king's wife. Carl the Stupid, yep. They met in the little community Saint Clair at the River Epte between Rouen and Paris. Here they signed a contract which gave Rollo the control over all land, and then it's about that he wouldn't kiss the king's foot. Yeah. The treaty is no longer available, but it's been reviewed by the author Dudos in his book Historia Normanorum. Yeah, we talked about that. It's Christian Knights, Crusades, 1095, 1099. They founded the kingdom Naples, Sicily. Wow. And conquered Lebanon. Arabic messenger Ibn Fadlan. Yeah. And talked about I've never before seen such perfect bodies. They were like tall palm trees, blonde, with a few of them red. My son is about to get engaged to a beautiful redhead Celt. So I'm looking forward to some redheaded grandchildren. Okay, so Lady Louisa Trench, 7th of February 1881. William Thomas Le Poer Trench, 3rd Earl of Clancarty. Commander Frederick Robert Le Poer Trench. To his family, he not only left the impressive house at Garbly and considerable wealth, but also the right to use the name and arms of Le Poer, as had been the wish of his great-grandfather. Yeah, and then we talk about he died at Kinnegad, County Westmeath. His portrait is given in a fine French print representing the Congress of Vienna, succeeded by his eldest son, William Le Poer Trench. William Power Keating Trench, 1st Earl of Clancarty, was connected through his mother Frances Power of Corheen with Dunham McCarthy, 4th Earl of Clancarty of the first creation. Born in 1741, he sat in the Irish Parliament from 1769 to 1797 for the seat of Garbly in County Galway. Yeah, I think we talked about that, supporting to bring a reform bill. Yeah, Ponsonby. Ponsonby, I think in one of the Ian Blyton books I used to read as a child, there's somebody called Ponsonby Smythe, and I just thought it was the most pretentious, hilarious name. I loved words, right, for a child. Anyway, he's created an Irish peer on the 25th of November 1797 with the title of Baron Kilconnell of Garbley, and then advanced to Viscount Dunlow and the Earl of Clancarty. Cabinet. McClintock. All right, John McClintock Jr. marries Lady Elizabeth Trench, the daughter of the first Earl of Clancarty by Anne Gardiner. Yeah, I think we went through this. Richard le Poer Trench, second Earl of Clancarty, the diplomat. Richard was the product of a marriage between a Cambrian Norman family of le Poers to the Huguenot Trench family, who moved to Ireland following leaving France due to political problems. Richard le Poer Trench, second Earl of Clancarty, also descended. Both the Cheneviques and the Trenches were of Huguenot origin. Master of the Mint, Richard le Poer Trench. So Robert le Poer Trench and Lieutenant Colonel 74th Regiment. This memorial has been erected by his brother Richard, the Earl of Clancarty. And then there's a link. The second Earl was William's eldest son, Richard. He was a consummate politician and spent many years as a diplomat for the Crown. In his dealings, I read this, with the people of Ballinasloe, he had a double standard. On the one side, he was a fair landlord by the standard of the day. Right. Furthermore, he was an extensive employer in the area and usually paid the average daily rate. But he had anti-Catholic tendencies. The darker side of his nature arose when matters of religion were involved. The whole of the family were staunch Protestants. And Richard's brother, Poer, was Archbishop of Tuam, the infamous Tuam where the 800 babies were found and swiftly covered up by Enderkenny and others. Yeah, we saw that intimidation to aid the proselytizing elements in the town. Yeah. He actively opposed giving any rights to Catholics. He changed sides when he found that substantial rewards were available for those willing to vote the right way. Hypocrite. He was rewarded for his, quote, loyalty with a post as Postmaster General, later as Master of the Mint. Curraghmore House by Oliver Fitzgerald, I think we've read this. Maybe this is no, it's originally printed in Waterford Today in the year 2000, April the 18th. The word Curraghmore comes from two Irish words meaning great marsh. Yeah, we've read this. So it's the Gertines or the le Poer Beresfords. Yeah, Robert le Poer, ancestor of the Waterford family. The eldest son of Sir Robert was Sir John, Baron of Dunoil, Dunoil Castle. The Dunoil family being the parent stock of all the Waterford branches of the Powers. The Curraghmore lines of the family originated with Roger, who built the ardent castle of Curraghmore. Richard Poer, Lord of Curraghmore, Sheriff. Another Richard, his grandson, Barony of Power and Curraghmore. Married to Catherine Butler, the daughter of Piers VIII, Earl of Ormond, by his wife Margaret Fitzgerald, a celebrated character. So Richard, first Lord of Curraghmore, was slain while on service for the crown by a traitor. The line of Curraghmore House ended with Lady Catherine Beresford, née Power, who had married Sir Marcus Beresford. Through this marriage with Poer in the family line, her husband was created Earl of Tyrone, but the inheritance of the title in the male line passed to the Gertine family. Numerous were the houses and branches of this family besides those of Dunoil and Curraghmore. There were also Carrigaline, Corbally, Faithfulhead, Bellevue, Snowhill, Kilfane, and Carrageen, to name just a few. Okay. Yeah, we've read that. The Round Tower, yeah. The Valley of the Clodagh River, Larry's Bridge. You can find this in detail in the first or second part of this. Yeah. Creation for Wikipedia, I think we've read this too. William Power Keating Trench, first Earl of Clancarty. www.balnaslow.com. Yeah. The Mayor of Poor it's recorded, was in the possession of the de Poer family for well over 200 years. The manor, rather, of Poor was in the possession of the de Poer family for well over 200 years, situated to the northwest of the village that we now know today as East Budley. Walter de Poer was in the service of King John for a time and became the Sheriff of Devon in 1222. Yeah, suggests he may have been present at the signing of the Magna Carta. Cecilia was the last Poer heiress, married into the Duke family from Sherborne in Dorset. The manor passed into their hands and remained there for another 300 years, known as Poor Hayes, then Duke's Hayes, and then simply Hayes. Hayes Barton, the birthplace of Sir Walter Raleigh, whose father, also Walter, was renting it from the Duke family. The Raleighs tried to buy the house eventually, but it's never been sold into private hands. Today it remains property of the Clinton Devon estates. Some of our power clan from Dungarvan, County Waterford. And then there's a link. And then there's more. That's a nice one. I'm at work browsing your blog from my new iPhone, Cassandra South. Just wanted to say I love reading through your blog and look forward to all your posts. Keep up the superb work. Okay. Now, I do believe I've got more information somewhere, and it may be in private communications between myself and Francis Mary. So I'll just see if there's a part 5. I thought it was just 4 parts. That's part 4. Yeah, I think it's just 4 parts here. I'll check my Facebook notes. I'm pretty sure there's more. But that's pretty amazing research, I think you'll agree. And I'll leave it there for now. AngelaScaches.org, Angela Power Disney, Angie, on Facebook and YouTube. And Angie Power Disney without the Y at the end on Twitter, because there wasn't enough spaces for the character of the letter Y. God bless.